Welcome to Silver Spring Design Advisory Panel. This is going to be item 2. In the replacement of the G2 garage in downtown Silver Spring. So we've got quite a crowd here. If we're missing, there's an extra seat here. There's lots of extra seats over there. You can pull them around if you want. We are going to go around and we're going to do introductions, I think, for this item, because almost everyone is in the room. I think what we'll do is have actually the DAT members, both in person and online, identify themselves because this team hasn't been here before, so they don't know everyone yet. And then we'll have the members of the development team introduce themselves, and then at the end, the planning department folks. So let's start with the DAT members so the team can see who the DAT members are. So would you guys in the room go first, David and then Alice, and then we'll go online after that.
I'm David Cronat. I'm the former dean of the School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation at the University of Maryland. I'm an architect. I live in Silver Spring. And I'm also a board member of the Terrapin Development Company.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alice Entz. I'm a DAP member. I'm an architect and urban designer. I work with Urban Design Associates out of Pittsburgh and do work all over the country. Also a former Torty Gallis employee for a decade or more. So I've done a lot of work in this region. And then I'm also a resident of Silver Spring. So I live right next to downtown Silver Spring. And so it's my backyard, essentially.
Then let's go to Bill and then Raj and Chajo.
I'm Bill Bonstra, 40-year architect, principal with Bonstra Harrison Architects. I reside in DC, but I am doing lots of work in Silver Spring. So I'm very excited about the future of Silver Spring as we climb out of pandemic. Thank you.
Morning, Praj Kaspikar. I work for an affordable housing nonprofit, been in affordable housing real estate development for 17 years in the DMV area, specifically Maryland, Silver Spring, Tacoma Park, and now in DC. I'm very passionate about real estate, good-looking real estate, and something that meshes well with the community. Former resident of Silver Spring. I was on a Silver Spring advisory board for a number of years and now current resident of Bethesda. Thanks for bringing this project to us.
Seeing that the last member of the DAP is not on this and she dropped off. So let me see if I can get her back on. In the meantime, let's have the members of the development team introduce themselves. It looks like there's 2 people online, so we'll just start there and then go back to the room.
Sure. I'm Jeff Mudd. I'm with Whiting Turner Contracting, the builder that's going to be constructing the garage eventually. And we've also got Jake Bradshaw from our office on the call too. So just so you know, thank you.
Okay, so now we'll move to, we'll just start here.
Zach
Oh,
Paulus.
hold on, Chajo, you got on. Great. Sorry, we were missing you for a minute. Can you hear me? Oh, no, she's frozen. Okay, I'm gonna email her and see what's going on. Meanwhile, you guys start then.
Okay. I'm Zach Paulus. I work for Rogers Consulting, the engineering firm on the project. I'm the planner and landscape architect.
Graham, principal with Rogers Consulting, site civil entitlement.
Chris Rowland, Lord Shirley and Brewer, Land Use Council.
Dan Sleer, I'm a third-party project manager for United Therapeutics.
Bill Commoners, Lord Shirley and Brewer, Land Use Council.
Robert Breslaw, United Therapeutics, corporate real estate.
Leslie Chang, United Therapeutics, corporate real estate.
JP Spickler, Fox Architects, the design architect.
Kate Mooney, Fox Architects.
John Judge with Desmond, design team project manager.
Okay. Hold on. Shajoy, can you talk yet?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yes. So why don't you introduce yourselves and then we'll do the planning folks.
Hi, this is Chowdhury. I'm a landscape architect in the DAP, and I currently work in the city of Alexandria. Can you hear me? It's on and off my camera.
Yes, we can hear you. And now we can see you. Great. Okay, so then planning. So I'm Matara Margulies. I'm a master planner in the planning department. I do down county and lots of Silver Spring work, including the Silver Spring Master Plan that we just completed. I'm the DAP coordinator.
Robert Cronenberg, I'm the Deputy Director here at Montgomery Planning. Welcome.
Paul Mortensen, Senior Urban Designer in the Director's Office here at Planning.
Stephanie.
Stephanie Dickel, Regulatory Supervisor, Tarrant County.
Online, we have Atul.
Good morning, everyone. Atul Sharma, I'm Assistant to the Deputy Director at Planning.
And Christina.
Hi, I'm Christina Sasaki with the Parks Department, and I work on the Silver Spring Sector Plan.
Okay. Before we get started here, I think for the DAP's benefit, I think it would be great if, I know this is putting people on the spot, if either Robert or Stephanie would speak to what a mandatory referral is and how this is different, even in just one sentence, and from the project that like they just looked at before this and the stuff we've been talking about before, because I think there's an important distinction. I'm not the qualified person to answer the question.
Sure. So mandatory referrals are, they're projects that are primarily for public agencies, and a much shorter timeline in terms of a review. And a lot of the focus for a mandatory referral is still at a site plan submittal level, but in many cases it's focused on design, master plan conformance, and less on zoning and some of the other regulations. But we do bring those up as part of a review. So a big part of the mandatory referral is really master plan and design. Process is a little different because it goes to our planning board in most cases for a review and their recommendation. And the recommendations for the most part are advisory. And it goes back to that agency that submitted the application, and it's up to that agency to take those recommendations and see how they can implement those.
Okay, I just wanted to give the DAP that background, and it is slightly different process than sort of a typical private development project that comes in and goes to the board for approval. And so the focus is a little bit different and the process at the board is a little bit different. So I assume the applicant team will explain how their project fits in terms of why this project is happening at all. So I'll leave that to them, and then it will hopefully make a little bit more sense. So with that, whoever has joined the meeting is able to pull up on the screen. Otherwise you can sit over there and plug your computer in, but joining the meeting is frankly actually easier than doing it. Just keep your sound off so it doesn't go crazy. Try and keep the presentations to about 15 to 20 minutes so we have enough time for the DAP conversations, because we will have to end a little bit, 11:30-ish. Perfect.
Okay, ready? Good morning. Thank you all for having us. As I said, I'm Bill Commoners. I'm an attorney with Lurch, Early and Brewer representing United Therapeutics this morning. And this is for mandatory referral application 2024011 for the future public parking garage number 22. It's located on the east side of Georgia Avenue, north of Colesville Road, and also just adjacent to a public alley that's on the south that serves a number of the small buildings facing on Colesville Road. It's a mandatory referral application, as Robert just mentioned. It's used for all county projects. This garage will be a county public parking garage, and Montgomery County is the applicant, although we are processing it for them. The property is at 8615 Georgia Avenue. It is currently a surface parking lot that runs from Georgia Avenue all the way back through to Fenton Street. It's classified in the CR5, C5, R5, H260. Still have to get used to that mouthful of stuff. But that is the new zone that was applied through the sectional map amendment to implement the new Silver Spring downtown and adjacent communities plan that Atara mentioned. The mandatory referral application was filed earlier this week with the planning board. It's going through the intake processing, and we anticipate the board's review before their recess this August. If you go to the next slide. So I want to introduce the project team to you. Robert Breslaw will be speaking in a few moments. He and Leslie Chang are representatives of United Therapeutics. Robert Graham of Rogers Consulting represents the civil engineering part of the project. John Judge of Desmond handled the parking and what I call the functional elements of the garage. And JP Spickler of Fox Architects handled the architectural aspects. So I want to turn it over to Rob, who's going to give some background on the company, the application that's before you today, and the bigger picture within which it fits. Rob?
Thank you, Bill. So as Bill said, my name is Robert Breslaw. I'm an associate director with the corporate real estate department at United Therapeutics. I think many of you within park and planning are familiar with United Therapeutics story, but for those of you who are not, just a very quick background. Back in the early 90s, our founder, Dr. Martine Rothblatt, was in the process of founding what is now known as Sirius XM Radio. She is a satellite engineer by training. And she's on a family vacation where her 6-year-old daughter all of a sudden became stricken with a rare disease. She was unable to suddenly walk up a flight of steps without her lips turning blue. And they eventually cut that vacation short, went home and went on a national search to all of the leading healthcare providers to figure out what was wrong with her daughter. Ultimately, they found out that she was stricken with a disease called pulmonary arterial hypertension. That is high blood pressure in your lungs that ultimately will lead to heart failure. And they ended up at Children's National down in Washington, D.C. And the doctors at the time basically told Martine to enjoy the time remaining with her daughter and prepare for the next steps. That was not acceptable to Martine. Martine decided to sell her entire stake in Sirius and start United Therapeutics. She eventually found out that GlaxoSmithKline had a molecule sitting on the shelf that they decided not to go through the commercialization process, where she eventually, through numerous attempts, was able to acquire the IP to that molecule, which is the foundation for United Therapeutics today. 3 of our commercial products today are based on that IP. That IP and drug commercialization was eventually used on her daughter. Her daughter is alive and well and will be celebrating her 40th birthday in about a month. And that has really manifested itself over the last 28 years into really what you see here on the screen. We are a company now. Last year in 2023, we generated over $2 billion in revenue. These products are treatments for various lung diseases, not just pulmonary arterial hypertension, but other rare orphan diseases as well. But they are not a cure. And ultimately, the goal of United Therapeutics is to find a cure for rare end-stage organ diseases. And the path that we are taking to solve that issue is through manufacturing an endless supply of transplantable organs. And we have several research and development arms of our company that are really focusing on just that. And we can get into detail around those various what those various groups are doing. But eventually we hope to bring that to Silver Spring. Montgomery County really has been a true partner for us from its inception. United Therapeutics was started in Silver Spring. Martine was living and still owns a home in Woodside Park when we started the company. And in the bottom middle of your screen, that is phase 1 of our campus that was delivered in 2007. And I think, as you see with all the buildings on our campus, we really view our buildings and our architecture as a representative of who we are as a company. We like to think that we are bringing something to downtown Silver Spring, an attraction for people to look at, to observe, to take part in. We offer tours to the community inside the building. We have public use spaces as part of that phase 1 delivery that is a public use space, any open to the public, where we have our bio wall that is running programs of nature and different things throughout the day. In about 2 years later, in 2009, we delivered phase 2A, which is the rotunda that abuts phase 1 on the corner of Cameron and Spring. Combined, both of those buildings really serve as the manufacturing hub where we actually produce these products here in Silver Spring. So we have over 250 employees that come to this campus on a daily basis. More than 60% of that is manufacturing staff that's actually responsible for generating these products that are serving our market. Roughly 2 years later, we were able to deliver phase 2B, which is across the connector on the other side of Cameron Street at 1110 Spring. And that is home of many of our administrative functions, finance, HR, IT. And then we took a couple year hiatus, but in 2018, we delivered the Unisphere, which at the time, and as far as we know, is still the largest site net zero facility in the United States, commercial facility. So that is 130,000 square feet of mostly administrative space. And we are able to generate as much energy on site as we produce on an annual basis there. And then lastly, in the bottom right corner is another one of our manufacturing facilities. And that will serve as the clinical site for one of these various R&D programs that will deliver manufactured organs. We call that GLACE, and that was delivered in the spring of 2019. So with all these buildings, we like to, as I said before, we really use it as a representation of who we are. We find that it is an attraction for Silver Spring. We find that it is an attraction for our employees, and it really brings them into the office and really proud to work in spaces like this. So as it relates to the mandatory referral process and really why we are here today, presenting on a garage that is actually going to be to the south of this aerial. So in December of last year, we came to terms on a general development agreement with Montgomery County, both in partnership with Department of Transportation and the County Executive's Office, to acquire the rights to Garage 2, which is shown in blue. I cannot underscore the significance of this in terms of UT's growth, both internally as well as an economic development opportunity for Montgomery County. We envision this as the home of a commercial hub for manufacturing organs. And before I go any further, we have multiple programs in that space, one of which is 3D printing organs. So this is where we take a proprietary bio ink that generates a scaffold of any organ for a recipient that's in need. And then we are taking blood and skin samples, reducing those to pluripotent stem cells, and then expanding them to the cells necessary to actually allow that organ to function. And we see Silver Spring as the home of that program when it becomes successful. And with that, we are envisioning a large-scale project that will generate multiple hundreds of jobs coming into Silver Spring, and a large-scale construction project, which will really generate just more activity in the downtown Silver Spring district. Now shifting to what we're here today, which is to talk about the future Garage 22. In an agreement as part of that GDA, we are responsible to replace the facilities that are there today in kind. One of which is the garage. There are two other facilities that sit there today. Another one is a parking operations facility. And then the third is a fiber hub. I'll put those last two projects to the side and focus on the primary function, which we're here today to talk about, which is the garage. So we have come to an agreement with the county to construct a replacement facility of 675 spaces. And we were confined by the super block of Colesville, Spring Street, and Georgia. And with that, we came to terms with the development group to acquire the rights to the surface lot where the replacement garage will go today. And with that, I will turn that over to Bob and he can discuss the site.
Thank you. Again, for the record, Bob Graham with Rogers Consulting. So we've put a little context map in here. We've identified our site as the number 1 red in the middle. The site was originally approved with the Fillmore property along with a secondary parcel, which I'll explain more later on. Item number 2 is the Fillmore, which faces out onto Colesville. Item 3 for coordinating reference is the existing G2 parking garage. Item 4 is the recently opened Silver Spring Recreation Aquatic Center. Item 5, the Silver Spring Transit Hub. And item 6, the Silver Spring Mall and the subject of one of your current DAP programs. And give you a little bit more context on your DAP filings. Again, we're number 1 in the center. Number 2 is the Georgia Cameron project. Some like to call it the Diner project, and number 3, the Ellsworth Place residential addition that's coming. You see we're sandwiched right in the middle of there. Give you a little further context. As mentioned, the site fronts on Georgia Avenue, 8615 Georgia Avenue. There's a second parcel which extends out to Fenton Street, which, while not part of this application, it is a part of the ground that is going to be transferred over to the county, and the county has the opportunity to redevelop that in any manner they so choose. And could be housing, could be anything else, county's choice. Couple orientation photos here. We've attempted to outline the site's location in red in each one of the photos. So in the top, looking north on Georgia Avenue, we have the site outlined in red, which is located in between the Lee Plaza building and the core apartment buildings. In the middle photo, we're looking south again. So now we've flipped around. Core apartment building with its iconic clock is shown on the left-hand side, Lee Plaza in the background. And if you were to go over to the Discovery corner, for those of us that are old enough to remember Discovery, you see a little tiny bit of red peeking out there just in the streetscape. So here in the upper photo, we've jumped over to Fiddler Street, looking across the intersection at where the site would be. Sandwiched in between the site and the core building is a private driveway that would service the core and the service loading portion of this, and that's highlighted a little bit further in the center photo there. The bottom photo shows how the parcel extends out to Fenton Street, which would be subject to the future county development in a manner they so choose. It should be noted that the driveway that is in the left-hand side of that photo will continue to operate. That does provide a connection to the public alley via easement system. So traffic will still be maintained between Fenton and Georgia, as well as serving the Fillmore loading dock at its rear. Jumping over to an aerial. Again, we've placed the building along Georgia Avenue. We have set back 10 feet from the right-of-way line in order to allow for some activation space as well as a secondary row of trees on here. Private easement you see going from Fenton Street over to the public alley and the associated parking lot. We will be temporarily restriping the parking, so that will be enhanced parking for Montgomery County DOT until such time as the redevelopment occurs. And we will be maintaining the full width of the public alley, which goes from Georgia Avenue up to the back of the Fillmore. And with that, I will hand it over to John Judge of Desmond in order to talk about the actual operations of the garage.
Thank you, Bob. As Bob mentioned, my name for the record is John Judge.
I don't have an origination story anywhere near as interesting as Rob's. But my role for the next couple of minutes is to talk through the various components of the project. Upon completion, Garage 22 will provide 675 public parking spaces on this site. Additional project components include 3,000 square feet of active use space that fronts Georgia Avenue. A segregated bicycle parking area also accessed from Georgia Avenue, and a dedicated motorcycle scooter parking area right next to the main entrance off of the alley that Bob just spoke about. Even though you think about parking, we are aware of the need to be sustainable with various decisions that we are making as part of this design. In addition to the bicycle parking area, other sustainable features that are being provided as part of this design are 6 dual-headed car chargers, which will serve a total of 12 vehicle spaces. Specification of dense concrete within the structure, both for its long-term durability characteristics, but also for its solar reflectance capabilities. And we're also designing the structure to accept the future installation of a photovoltaic array up above the planned uppermost parking level of the facility. We'll be fully compliant with the Maryland Accessibility Code. Both of the elevators in the northwest corner are sized for stretcher access. And we're providing a total of 14 accessible parking spaces in the facility. Of those 14, 4 are van accessible. Here on the, look, if we, not quite ready to move on, Zach, thanks. Here on level G, you can see the 2 vehicle access points. The one in the southwest corner accessing off of the public alley, and the other is in the northeast corner through what will initially be a surface lot connecting to the street network to the east. Our customers will be 2 different types, frankly similar to the customers that park in the parking facility below this building. We anticipate permit parkers that will be given hang tag permits. We anticipate daily parkers that will be given the option of either paying for parking using the Park Mobile application, or can pay for parking at pay on foot machines located in centralized locations in the facility itself. Here on the first floor, the southern bay is following the existing slope of the alleyway, a little bit less than 5%. We make the turn, we merge with the second access point, turn left, and that ramp goes up over top of the active space at a ramp of about 3%. Now, if we could move on to the next slide, you can see that with this functional design, a customer will drive past every single parking space within the facility. The column-free design so that there should be quick recognition of available parking, which will enable the facility to rapidly ingress and egress during its event modes. The traffic flow is complementary to our pedestrian destinations, which you see here in the northwest corner at the stair elevator core and the northeast corner at the stair tower. So we have a multitude of these typical levels. The accessible parking that I spoke of earlier is all clustered adjacent to the elevators. And then after a total of 7 levels, we get to the next slide, which is the roof parking area with the top of the garage fronting onto Georgia Avenue. One thing that I should point out as we're talking about sustainable features is the column locations within this facility. You'll note that they're located along the exterior, and you'll note that they're also located along parking space lines between the adjacent spaces. And what that allows us to do is that allows us to free up some space that might otherwise be concrete to turn over to the site to do things with the site itself. And you're going to see that expression of the columns in a couple of the elevations that JP is going to show you in a couple of minutes.
So this is the very top, 7 parking levels, like I mentioned. If we could look at the next slide, which is a section through the building. This is cut in the east-west direction, looking north. It's Revit in all of its great capabilities. You see the beams, you see the ramping system, and you see the large clearance space above the active use along Georgia Avenue. And you can see also that due to the existing slope of the site and due to the ramping system, we're quite a ways higher above existing grade on the Georgia Avenue end of the facility as compared to the eastern end of the facility. And then finally, building section, this is cut through the active use space, looking and through the elevator core, looking toward the west. Some simple beam column system showing the stair and elevator core to the right. And now let's get to the really interesting part. Please, this is JP Spickler, and he's going to talk us through the exterior design.
Thank you, John.
I just want to say that you guys have already well exceeded the time for the presentation, so if you think you can, and this is the part that the DAP cares about, everything else up to here is really not kind of germane to today's discussion. So if you could try and get to the important stuff here, so we have time for the DAP.
Absolutely.
Because we have to keep it to an hour so that it's an equitable treatment for all projects that the DAP are.
Good. So I'll go quickly. Again, I'm JP Spickler, a principal at Fox Architects. We're working in collaboration with John and his team at Desmond to develop the facade primarily focused on Georgia Avenue. This first image illustrates the massing, an aerial view from the southwest. And I think what this image does is underscore the importance of creating a facade with more elegance and architectural sophistication than one might expect in a public parking structure, given its location on Georgia Avenue. Also note the lower 2-story retail buildings between the Lee Building and the Fillmore Theater. We're going to talk about the impact of that to the facade in a moment. Next slide. This is the same image. You're just seeing transparently through the Lee Building to illustrate the southern edge of the massing of the building, which is largely following the property line, but cranking to the northeast. The next slide. This image is an aerial view from the northwest. It's illustrating where the central vertical circulation is occurring at the northwest corner in a tower containing elevators and a stair. Opposite that is the singular use of curtain wall on the core apartment building between the garage and that private driveway. And so there's a dialogue happening there between those two elements that we like. And this transparent image through the core apartment building again illustrates that private driveway between the two structures. The next slide illustrates the west elevation. I'm going to run through the elevations quickly because we have some detailed 3-dimensional drawings that are going to make all of this more clear to you. The facade fronting on Georgia Avenue is composed in 3 primary elements: a clear active use space base, a vertical tower containing elevator and stair, and then a central mass containing the parking. The precedent images to the far right of this slide, we have illustrations of, but you're seeing vertical metal fins that would screen the mass of the parking. The overall height is 82 feet. The tower is 17 feet above that. The south facade is located, as we said, along a public alley. However, the southeastern uppermost portion may be visible from vantage points on Colesville Road. This portion of the facade will be treated in a manner that echoes the Georgia Avenue facade, allowing it to be identified from the surrounding context. And we're still refining this particular area a bit. Next slide. This is the east elevation. It contains a stair tower located in the northeast corner. This will be treated similarly to the stair tower on Georgia Avenue. The precedent image you're seeing on the far right is illustrating a passive security concern and strategy. Passive security taking the form of transparency, which is very important in public parking structures. Specifically, we're utilizing a frit coating, a ceramic frit, on a percentage of the glass. That will allow transparency from in and from out. It also prevents a mirror effect from within the stair tower after dark hours. It deals with thermal control and bird control as well. The next image is the north elevation. You're seeing to the right of this elevation the vertical tower that contains the elevators and the stair. The elevator shafts are again enclosed in clear glass, and the elevator cabs will be glass as well. This gives passive security, transparency, to the inhabitants, as well as orienting them toward Georgia Avenue, where the entry and exit points, the pedestrian entry and exit points are. The next slide shows a view of the west facade looking from the south. In this view looking north along Georgia Avenue, you see the glass active use base, which is intended to engage the pedestrian realm. The height of the base shares a datum relationship with the retail arcade of the adjacent core apartment building to the immediate north. And we have a diagram that's going to illustrate this more clearly. Vertical circulation is clearly expressed in a glass tower located along the north end of the facade. Transparency here allows individuals visual security as well as orientation to Georgia Avenue. And this element rises above the roof to punctuate the skyline and identify entry and exit points for the pedestrian at the scale of the block. The bulk of the facade, screening the vehicle parking, is intended to provide a visually kinetic and artistic expression for this urban fabric. The next view shows the west facade looking from the north along Georgia Avenue. Across the central facade are fixed vertical metal fins that are varied using a parametric design process to provide for a lighter, more sculptural facade. The vertical fins will allow transparency out from within and appear more dynamic from varying vantage points across the facade. The view, parametric design variations in the vertical fins also give an undulation to the overall facade. We thought it was very interesting understanding that parametric design is often utilized in urban planning to optimize pedestrian and vehicular circulation. We thought it an interesting process to create an expression, an architectural expression for the facade, the bulk of the facade. This image shows the glass enclosure of the stairs and the elevator cabs, again providing security and transparency in orienting one to Georgia Avenue. The next slide. Here, the southwest corner of the structure, the metal vertical fins return the corner, further defining the active use space in the base along Georgia Avenue and identifying the primary vehicular entry and exit point off of the public alley. The transition from metal fins to the concrete structure occurs where the massing of the building is cranking to the northeast. The next slide illustrates the upper southeastern portion of the garage, again echoing the design of the Georgia Avenue facade, as it may be visible from varying points on Colesville Road. This identifies it as that public structure if you're leaving one of the theaters there on Colesville Road, and again provides an artistic expression rather than just the structure of a parking garage. The next slide illustrates some detail related to those vertical fins. They're extruded aluminum fins, factory coated with an electrostatic powder coating attached to a channel that's bolted into the upturned concrete beam. There are 8 different angles that we're algorithmically manipulating to create the undulation and the movement in the overall facade. The next image is a diagram noting the primary materials. The belt course or the eyebrow capping the base of the building is an aluminum composite metal panel system. The glass enclosing that active use public space in the base is clear low E glass supported internally by a vertical aluminum mullion. So the intent there is to make that space very engaging with the pedestrian realm, with the public realm. And again, glass, fritted glass, and a lightly sandblasted precast frame the stair and elevator tower to the north side. It's important for us to consider durability and long-term lifespan of materials. This is key to the county and their concerns. We want this garage to look beautiful 70 years and beyond. So that was an important part of the materials selection and detailing. This composite elevation shows the skyline. This is looking east. You have Cameron Street to the north on your left and Colesville Road to the right. So you can see the undulation in the skyline and the punctuation of the vertical circulation within the garage, again, identifying it on the scale of the block. The next image is an enlargement of the connection of the core apartment building to the new garage. You can see there's a horizontal datum of the eyebrow that is defining the base of the garage and the metal canopy of the arcade at the core apartment building. The topography slopes down to the right or to the south from the core apartment building to the garage. So we still, though, thought it important to make that datum relationship with those canopies on the two. The core apartment arcade is recessed in shadow mostly. It's a bit deeper. Our storefront is brought forward, but there is a bit of a yin and yang. But we think this is accomplishing what's strongly urged in the Silver Spring guidelines, which is the creation of an active, vibrant pedestrian realm in the base of the building. This is an image, a cross-section through George Avenue looking north. So it shows the relationship of the garage, again, about 82 feet to the twin towers across the street. It also underscores the application of the Silver Spring streetscape design guidelines that we'll be utilizing to much improve the sidewalk on George Avenue in front of this new structure. Zach,
Is there any way we can get to our discussion?
yeah, we have a,
I think we know the design. I think it's very clear. I think we really need to provide comment.
Great.
Or we're not going to be commenting at all, I guess.
and Paul, I think that's great. We have a 30-second animation that we can show as we begin the transition to the next part of the presentation. I'll let Bob orchestrate the remaining conversation. This really was the end of the architectural explanation of the facade. Again, movement, undulation, artistic expression, appropriate to George Avenue, as experienced in varying daylight conditions and from varying vantage points. And then the last 15 seconds shows the improved new streetscape condition, again, creating vitality, transparency, and abiding by the desires of the Silver Spring guidelines.
Thank you. Let's jump straight to the DAP comments. Who would like to begin?
Can I ask a couple questions?
Since we have such limited time.
I think it might be helpful, just that, I mean, why, you're matching the number. I think we all agree that the whole project is something very, very worthwhile for United Therapeutics and for the county. But there is a matching, I guess, of the parking. Was there any analysis on how much parking is needed for
I
downtown
was gonna ask
or
about
anything
the
like that?
75. Where did that come from?
Yeah, so that, so the G2 parking structure today has over 1,300 spaces. And so there was significant analysis done in terms of what the daily parking count is today. Also, the number of parkers that park in the surface parking lot today as well for Lee Development Group. And so that was over several rounds of negotiation. Also taking into account what the county wanted to do with the future surface lot and accounting for future need as it relates to that future project. And so all of these, it was an extensive negotiation on both the part of, we did not want to build any more than we had to. The county was acting responsibility in terms of making sure that it suited the immediate community and the need for parking, but not overbuilding by any stretch of the imagination. So I think we came to a relatively good number as it relates to the need that we saw.
There were two studies done in 2020, looking at the occupancy of existing garage too. And both studies counted about 430 vehicles in the space. So just from the percentage standpoint, garage two as it exists is very much underutilized.
Yes, I drive through it all the time.
Well, there you go. Then you know better than we.
Yeah. But I think that leads to the next question, which is a little bit more of a development question. So make me stop if I need to, but I do think it'd be helpful for us to understand as we're looking at the general plan of downtown Silver Spring, the uses that are here. Georgia is a very active street. And to go back to United Therapeutics and think about sort of the mission statement that you said early on and sort of the health of people, well, we're thinking about the health of cities. And when you put a single-use parking garage on what is a major thoroughfare in a downtown Silver Spring, it feels like a very antiquated approach to development on this lot versus trying to have more of a mix of uses and a real vibrancy on Georgia Avenue. And so I don't know, I know that's part of a much larger development deal, but I think it'd be helpful for us to understand if there was any thought about a mix of residential uses as part of that. I know the new zone allows for well above the height. There's a tremendous amount of FAR on the table here. The remaining piece of property, the surface lot, it's not really viable with that alley connection to really develop that into housing. It's very tight and narrow. And it seems like there could have been a great synergy to have additional housing along with this parking garage. So I think while that's a little bit beyond the DAP's purview, and we can comment on the building, I think it might be helpful to understand as we're trying to implement this vision for Silver Spring, the design, what that ground floor is, the active use is there. I think United Therapeutics does phenomenal buildings in Silver Spring. I've lived there the whole time that they've been going up, and the quality, I do not worry as much about the quality because I've seen great quality in downtown Silver Spring, and I really appreciate that. But I'm more concerned about the use here on Georgia Avenue.
A quick question to maybe Bill, is this a part of the negotiation with DGS? Is that what it is?
Well, the package of improvements that were required for this, the ops building, the relocation of the county's fiber equipment, and the replacement of the garage. First of all, the county wanted it within a certain general area. And if you look at that quadrant of Silver Spring that's defined by George Avenue, Colesville, and so on, there's not a lot of places to put a replacement garage. So this was a fortuitous availability of site. That's one fact. That's sort of the practical side. The county was very concerned about acquiring the entire site running from Georgia to Fenton because of that residual parcel. It does have some easements at the base levels, but it has all the air rights going beyond that. And we did a study, Bob's group did a study looking to see whether one could accommodate the development capacity of the entire existing surface lot within the height limit of that portion to the rear. And the answer was yes, we could. The question of why it's not being done simultaneously, I don't want to cast any aspersions on Montgomery County, but they have a kind of slow process to make decisions like that. And the garage and the related facilities had to be provided more quickly than they could accommodate. This way, by pulling the garage forward, as opposed to spreading it over the entire surface lot, current surface lot, by pulling it forward to the Georgia Avenue side, it gave the residual site on facing Fenton Street, and it gave the county time to decide what to do with it.
Can you please share that site plan again, which shows this location and where this, how much of the surface parking is remaining after this proposed structure?
The surface lot area, that is the Fenton Street parcel, is just a little over half an acre, 21,000 square feet. And the garage portion is 38,000. Right.
You'll always need to maintain access. That's one of your main parking accesses through the surface lot.
Well, it's provided there, but it's not necessary per se.
Okay.
The principal entrance is off the public alley.
Okay.
The surface lot connection is a convenience for today, but it doesn't have to be. But again, because if you look at sort of where that curve is, coming down to connect to the back of the public alley. So that's the service and access and loading for the Fillmore, which is also a county facility, and connecting to the public alley so that service trucks can come in off Fenton Street, serve those buildings along Colesville, and then go out to Georgia Avenue. That clearly has to be maintained. So it means you've got to lift whatever development goes there to allow that to remain. So the surface parking that you show could remain, but need not necessarily.
In answer to your question about the ground floor, because it is part of the county operations, they're going to be the ones to control the leases going in there. So we're listing it as active use in order to provide a broader range. At one point in time, we called it retail, but that didn't quite fit because we didn't know that, you know, a shop was going to go in there. But we did provide an expanded sidewalk off of it, because there's about 2 foot of grade change as you drop across the site in order to accommodate a pedestrian walkway adjacent to the building or other uses that interact with that space.
The planning board also, I think, in recent years has recognized that retail is not always the solution, the be all and the end all. And so they've started talking about activating uses, activating spaces, which is why we pulled off the retail name, put this on there, because first of all, it's a county facility, so they're going to control it, not us. But it also gave sort of a broader opportunity of what kinds of activities could go there to create that activity, not just limiting it to retail. We didn't want to sort of put a thumb on the scale of what that would be.
Just quickly, I'm just very intrigued by this position of the county and, you know, just this amount of parking in this area and really not utilizing this for a different use. So as part of the negotiation package, has there been any thought given to looking at it as what would be maybe a future like development potential, like adding anything on top of this? I mean, recently the county, the housing and DGS put out these, you know, like parking sites for redevelopment as part of their RFPs. And now they are, you know, supporting this, which is just, so yeah, is there any, I guess, potential on adding anything on top of this garage in future? Is it being designed for that or not at all?
Similar to the mall property.
It's all
We just
sloped.
looked at, yeah.
It's all sloped floors, so no, they couldn't develop it that way.
Okay.
Part of the answer to that question is for the county to decide what structure was necessary. They needed to have a sense of what they would be building using that structure. And that's where their decision-making process didn't fit with the timing of being able to bring this forward. They sort of caught in the complex and integrated nature of their design and selection process to decide what to do that would drive the structure in order to be able to do it. So it was discussed, but it didn't fit within the constraints of what was needed. That's part of the reason why they looked to the parcel to the east.
The bureaucratic constraints, right?
That's one might say that.
Yeah.
Tara, given the philosophical issue of the parking garage, should we focus on design at all, or should we table that for another time?
No, I think in the remaining,
You really want to hear about her. I think we
8
should,
minutes, I think we should talk a little bit about the facade, because if we have
Yeah.
a little control over the development deal, although it's great to understand how this came to be. But I
Yeah.
think we should talk about that, yes, Bill.
Yeah, well, I mean, I certainly support a moratorium on parking garages, especially on Georgia Avenue. But if that's, you know, that can be taken up philosophically at another time. Architecturally, I feel like it's a wonderful way to screen a parking garage. Parking garages, you know, they aren't necessarily wonderful architectural typology. But I think the idea of the screening that Mr. Spickler has been describing, the fact that the building comes to the ground at the corner, can be wonderful. I appreciate the effort to provide facade screening where seen from Colesville Road. I feel like there's more screening that would be necessarily along the north side, which is noticeably somewhat junky. So I would suggest that if this does move ahead architecturally, that we look at photographs and exposures in other places, certainly along that north side, to see if we can continue some type of opaque wall. It doesn't have to be as exuberant and artistic as what you've shown, but something that might screen parking garage exposure. That's my only comment.
I have a couple of comments, and one is more of an overview. I would greatly appreciate when you show elevations, that you show the adjacent properties at the same time, at the same scale and the same level of detail. It seems very odd to me that when you're presenting your building in isolation, when it has neighbors across the alley and you never depict those neighbors in any way in terms of material, scale, and finish, that it's hard to judge what you're proposing. And that's not just unique to you. Every architect that comes in here does exactly the same thing. And I'll just say one other thing, Bob Fox, your colleague, was a student of mine. So tell him he's got the C for the day. So,
David, like Mr. Bonstra and Leslie to my right, we're all Maryland alumni. So the university is well represented in the room this morning.
We already had a discussion earlier in the morning.
So the next thing I would say is that my sense is that the articulation of the vertical circulation as an independent element doesn't serve you well. And I don't see no need for that as a signal at the scale of the pedestrian. In fact, my point of view would be that if you put a canopy over the entry into the garage that protected the pedestrian coming in, and there was signage at the pedestrian scale, that would work far better. That would make the opportunity to make the facade from alley to alley as a uniform developed thing that isn't filled with articulation. The Lee building is hyper articulated in an odd kind of way. It's not a stellar building in downtown Silver Spring in my mind. And the building directly to the, what would that be? The north? Yeah. Is also, I think, a little over articulated. So to add a level of articulation isn't helpful. So I'd prefer to see the screening that you develop stretch from end to end and not to put super emphasis on the tower. The next thing I'd suggest is that, in fact, if the tower has to extend all the way to the top, then the facade should pull all the way up, and you can just, it's a screen, so it can go all the way up. And that unifies the facade and helps to articulate it. Then as we go down the alley and we get to the entry, it just seems to me very odd that the screening stops at some arbitrary point and doesn't somehow incorporate the entry. So if I'm a driver and I drive down the alley and I'm trying to find where to turn into the garage, that somehow that isn't marked in the same kind of way. So what I'm trying to say is, I would think a more homogeneous, continuous idea of how you develop the facade, and then really emphasize on making the pedestrian environment hospitable by having the canopy extend from edge to edge, articulating the signage as to where you enter, how you're going to incorporate signage into the ground floor, all of which would be ways that you could develop it.
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting concept. And I think it could make a very powerful statement, the simplification of the overall facade. I think our genesis in articulating the vertical pedestrian circulation the way we did is we like our buildings to not need signage. I think good architecture works well if you don't have to depend on signs to move through it. And we like the idea of more honestly expressing what's happening inside the structure, so a pedestrian intuitively knows where they're going to find the door, or when they're in it, where Georgia Avenue is, and they feel more transparent and comfortable, especially in winter hours or PM hours, rather than feeling like they're behind a screen that's screening parking as well. So I think our design intent was to make a more honest expression of the facade relative to the internal functions, and to make that experience for the singular part of the garage that's not vehicular to really be more open and engaging with the street for the pedestrian. That was our impetus, at least.
Well, it seems to me that they're not mutually exclusive. And so making something that's more continuous and not fragmentary on the facade, actually, I think enhances the design and enhances the pedestrian experience.
And again, if you saw that facade with the two elevations to each side all together, I think you would see the whole composition. And I think it would be much more clear that that tower becomes a little bit odd in the overall.
Yeah, and Paul, in fact, we actually liked the dialogue between, and it's not rendered here to David's point, the corner, the southwest corner of the core apartment building is the only part of that structure that has curtain wall. And it's just on one bay on the George Avenue side and one bay on the driveway side. And then there's a cafe in the base. So we liked the idea that the garage's internal people space, if you will, was having a dialogue with the one part of the facade and massing in the core apartment building that's different from the private apartment. And rather than just ending a garage screening program next to what is in the core apartment building, a unique condition in that architecture. So we felt like we were actually having a dialogue with the adjacent building, not ignoring the adjacent building.
Programmatically, you bring up a really good point because, sorry,
I'm
could
gonna
I?
let Joy talk because she has.
Oh, sorry.
About this project and we're almost out of time.
Okay.
Then we can go back.
Yes, yeah. I like the facade design. I feel like when I look at it, it doesn't look like a parking garage. It looks like something trophy and nice. I do have a question is there a particular reason that this project, not referring to the SSDAC guideline, but to the 2019 Silver Spring Street guideline? Because they have different, dimensions and bike lanes and bike buffer requirements.
Yes, that's a good point. It's not, but something that the team should be aware of. You guys looked at the old streetscape standards.
And we
Start over, look at the sector plan. There's a section for Georgia Avenue in it. Go from there, go to the design guidelines.
right there,
That's
there is a
great.
section.
Yeah.
We looked at the section. Every one of our dimensions meets or exceeds the Silver
Just-
Spring streetscape as currently approved. We know it's changing.
Right.
The master plan, the design guidelines, and complete streets.
It's just
So
that
we try to
images in
merge
there,
them all
Right.
together.
I would say rely on the design guidelines because that's, because the other one's changing and that sort of takes precedence. But yes, it's a little mixed up right now, but that's okay. You guys will fix that for your application for when you submit the manager report. Any last comment, Alice? And then we really have to wrap up just so the DAP is aware. I know David had to leave because he had to leave exactly at 11:30. There's not, it's just advisory. As we said, there's no vote here like in previous projects. So I think we'll have Alice's comment and then Bill has the last comment and then we'll be done. Alice, go ahead.
So just a quick programmatic comment. I think bringing up the coffee shop that's on the other side is a good thing to think about. You want to group your active uses. So does the vertical circulation for the garage actually want to be on the other side so that you have cafe, future, whatever active use it is? So there's an adjacency there and a continuation of the uses. I don't know. It's just
No,
a
it's a good question,
question.
Alice. I think the driver there is the elevator is with the stairs as it should be. And that's the ingress and egress point for all pedestrians. So they're in fact coming out next to a coffee shop versus coming out next to the corner of the Lee building that has nothing on that corner. Yeah.
I do appreciate the fact that you pulled the building back, you added extra trees and I do not appreciate the articulation of the building to the core building that sets the active use back. So thank you for doing that and pulling that to the sidewalk. I think there is some street.
Yeah, that's real important, we
Really
think.
nice, so.
Good, thank you.
Well, just one last comment. I appreciate what David said about continuing more of the artistic skin. But I think it would probably serve you better to push that stair vertical in a little bit. It would give you more room to the street and more for the canopy. And it would also give a nice break to the sort of artistic box of the parking garage. So in addition to then adding some screen members beyond what you've shown, as David mentioned, especially on the south side, but on the north side as well. Thank you.
I have one last design comment, but typically when we look at these buildings, we also typically make a comment about trying to tie the building, the mass of the building to the street. And right now, it's really, really floating. The mass of the building is floating above the street of floor. And I don't know if there's something that can be done on that first streets. I know that flexibility with retail always is a concern, but something that ties it together. Well, I am, and I think it just has to do with the, you know, the pedestrian realm of having some sort of sense of scale and having, you know, just something that makes the building look like it's part of the ground.
Yeah, I mean, it started in a life that was very trabeated, and we felt like obliquely that was creating less visual connectivity to the active use or retail space. So we're modernists. We don't feel the obligation to trabeate a base. We do feel the obligation to have a base and reinforce the base the Silver Spring guidelines want, just in a more, I think, transparent, modern way.
Wonder if
So thank you for coming in and thank you for such a comment, and give you some food for thought about the garage design. Thank you to the DAT members for the extended session this morning. And yeah, we're done. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Joy, I
Thank
sent you guys
you.
an email with an additional meeting today, so check your email.
Thanks. I don't know why.